say, is this really about terror or is it about demography? Because we need to ask that question, and we need to really answer that question. It is about demography. It is about ethnic cleansing. It is about apartheid. It is about an Israeli policy that sees the conflict as a zero-sum game. And we really have to make that point clear. Our issue is very easy to sell. I mean, it really is very easy to sell. You know, the Israelis spend about $15 million a year on PR. You know, forget about the $40 million they spend on lobbying and everything else. $15 million just goes to PR firms. If you notice, in the second year of the Intifada, or about the second and a half year in the Intifada, the Israelis started to use females, American females, who are Israeli soldiers, to be the spokesperson for the Israeli Department of Defense. And we saw the report, before it happened, we saw the report from the PR firms that they advised the Israelis that you need to start using females who speak with an American accent to speak to the American media about the Israeli army and its practices. And they're doing that. And many other things about softening the image of Ariel Sharon and so on. We, on the other hand, we really do not need $15 million for PR. We just need to talk about the lump sum payment by January 31st. We need to talk about the $10 billion that Israel just got last year, in the middle of last year, from the United States. $10 billion. None of it was in loan guarantees, and the Israelis have not paid the first $10 billion that they got at George Bush 1. They haven't paid any of it, and now they're getting, or they already got the second $10 billion. However, and this is another side that we can share with our neighbors and with our communities, the larger community that is not Arab and Muslim and people of conscience or people who are aware. About a month before the Israelis came to get the $10 billion, United Airlines was about to file for bankruptcy, if you remember, in the middle of last year. And they went to the president and said, we need some rescue here. Because of September 11, the business went down and they're really suffering big time. They're about to file for bankruptcy. United Airlines employs 80,000 Americans. And they said, we need $1.8 billion to float. The president said, no, we don't have the money. Next day, United Airlines handed out 17,000 pink slips. 17,000 Americans were without a job because the president would not rescue United Airlines. A month later, the Israeli finance minister comes to the United States, and what does he say? He said they need the $10 billion. And you know what reason he gave for wanting the $10 billion? He said that their economy is suffering.
Yes.
I said, my economy is suffering. I want to pass an amendment for my home mortgage, where the bank will give me a grant that is not any less than what I owe in principal and interest. I think every one of us need that. But really, on a serious note, imagine that United Airlines loses that kind of opportunity to be rescued by the government, and imagine if we go to the home base of United Airlines and we put half a page ad and we say, why is it that you denied United Airlines $1.8 billion opportunity to rescue itself and rescue 17,000 families from being unemployed, and at the same time you give $10 billion to Israel? I think we have a responsibility. And that responsibility is great. Especially that now we're seeing, I mean, at first we're seeing a trend in the Arab and Muslim community. First we lost the Arab left. I mean, the Arab left almost doesn't exist anymore, except in some circles, thank God. But in America here, we have some of the former Marxists and the former leftists, if you will, who are now all of a sudden, they're in love with the Republicans, they're in love with the president, and they just cannot spare an opportunity to really tell the president what a great job he's doing for us. And I'm not talking about Dr. Ziad Hassan, I'm just talking about everybody else. But also in the Muslim community, all of a sudden, we found some Muslims, so-called Muslim leaders, are going to those, quote-unquote, interfaith meetings that you and I would not even be invited to. And they come to Washington, D.C., and they hold a press conference, and in their statement they say that the bedrock of settling the Middle East conflict is the Geneva Initiative and the Nusayba Ayalon Plan. And those guys are calling themselves Muslims and Muslim leaders, and they have these big names next to them. I think you and I have a responsibility and an obligation, because first of all, to respond to those people, but really before talking about responding to them, the only reason that they exist because you and I are really not doing a very good job of presenting our case. There are great organizations, and you see the number of organizations that are sponsoring this event. I think we need to come together. And I'm talking about coming together practically. We did our congressional scorecard. This is our hall of fame. Those are the great members of the House and the Senate who did a very good job of supporting us and standing with us. But let me show you the hall of shame. A very crowded hall of shame. Let's see how your two senators did. I guess by your snickering, you know how they did. Dianne Feinstein, -11 out of -16. Barbara Boxer, -10. They have done a very horrible job. Brad Sherman, I mean, you have Brad Sherman here from California. You have Harry Waxman, -10. You have Howard Berman, -14, my goodness. And I think we need to hold their feet to the fire, and we need to come and really look at their record. How are they voting on different issues? And we need to call them to task. Brad Sherman said at the beginning of the Intifada, he said, we know who the bad guys are. They are the Palestinian mothers who are putting their children in front of Israeli soldiers so that they can be shot in order for them to get in front of CNN. That's Brad Sherman, that is your congressman right down the street. And I can only think of my 5-year-old. I mean, how many minutes in front of CNN would his life be worth to me? I mean, how racist of Brad Sherman to speak such words, and he can speak them with impunity, because it's fashionable to bash the Palestinians, because, I mean, we're the villains at the end of the day. We're the terrorists. When we took the first ever congressional delegation that is sponsored by Muslim and Jewish organizations, ANJ and JPPI, and the Israelis stamped our passports, every one of us stamped our passports, denied entry. I mean, I've never seen a red American passport before until that trip. They are on the congressional delegation. I mean, some have the diplomatic, if you will, American passport, and the Israelis did not mind stamping those passports, denied entry. Because, frankly, the Israelis were confused what to do with this is a delegation of Muslims and Jews coming to visit Palestine and Israel. We visited the Department of State before we went. I think Dr. Barouti is right. For once we are a little bit learning, slowly but surely we are learning the ropes that we don't, I mean, the way to do things is with not necessarily in-your-face type, where we have to hold the signs, you know, this guy is terrorist and that guy is bad, and we shout and we scream, and the only thing that the news media will give is a blip. Somebody's shouting, and they look really with their face wrinkled because they're shouting so hard, and just we have no control over that media. We took that delegation, they denied us entry because they're confused. I wanted to end with sharing with you a story of really how effective these things can be. A member of Congress from this area sent his staffer with us. His staffer was a young lady from Iowa who was the queen of the county fair. She's never been outside of the United States or Canada. Her name was Michelle. And Michelle just felt the urge right when we got to Kennedy Airport that she had to tell me, say, by the way, Khaled, I'm going and I'm really neutral. I'm not taking sides. I said, Michelle, we don't want you to take sides. We don't want you to be neutral. We just want you to go and see how things are going. Michelle goes, and halfway through the flight, I just want you to know, I'm going neutral. I said, neutral, babe, neutral. We don't want you but to be neutral. We get there, and the Israelis deny us entry. They hold us for 6 hours. They take me in for 2 hours of interrogation, and everybody's nervous, and then they say, you're out of here. They kicked us out, with the exception of one Jewish person who was in the delegation. They say, you can come in. And of course, he was just too embarrassed to get in, and he refused. He's going to go by himself. The delegation goes out, and we go back to Jordan, of course, back into Jordan, and we start our calls, and everybody is calling their member of Congress, and they call them the Department of State, the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv, and the Council in Jerusalem and so on. And